Welcome to the Waiting List podcast. Tell us a story.
It's like many things you start building from scratch.
And then I'm like, wait, I really do like watches because
you've seen so many watches that makes you excited.
I think I really do like watches.
Yeah. I think it's a great way to see if you are a watch enthusiast.
Welcome everybody to the Waiting List podcast. You are listening with me, Alex, and with my co-hosts Daniel and Lung Lung.
Hey.
Hello.
So we're joined with a close friend of mine, Roneel, which you can find at I Dream of Watches on Instagram. And he's a mutual friend of Jonathan Boy. So if you had the chance, please listen to Boys as well later. And so I want to say thank you, Roneel, for participating in this.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. So I know you through actually, of course, Boy, but you actually come from a family of like quite, serial entrepreneurs. But before we get to that stage, I'd love to know about your background and how you all began, because I think you spent some time in Japan as well, right?
Yes, I actually grew up in Japan, so we've been entrepreneurs for a long time. My grandfather, who is not with us anymore, but he actually moved over to Mumbai from Karachi when the partition happened between India and Pakistan, and he actually started his business selling pens on the street. So
Wow.
that was his beginning. And they grew that business. They opened mills. They had factories for silk. But my father decided he didn't want to join that business. And he got a job in Japan with a trading company.
How did he get from Mumbai to Japan, sorry?
Well, the way my grandfather told this to me was in the same building which we lived in Mumbai, which my dad lived in Mumbai. There was a friend he used to go for walks with, and he had major trading companies around the world. He had one in Nigeria, Cameroon, Ghana, India, of course, and Japan and Hong Kong, Korea. So he got him a job at a trading company in Japan, and so he was allowed to run and be a director of the trading company in Japan, which was exporting calculators and a lot of Japanese products back then, because that's what Japan used to do, manufacture. And that's how
Why did you pick Japan? Out of all those places that they have offices, why Japan? Because it's like the language you're really gonna. Because I assumed that your father could speak English. Is that right?
Yes, he does speak English.
So it's like that place is like English doesn't help that much, man.
No, if you live there, and it wasn't even Tokyo, where English is more prominent. You're in Osaka, so it's like an industrial center. Yeah. So he got there and he's vegetarian, and the way he tells it, I'm sure he probably ate a couple bites of meat here and there when he didn't know he was eating it. So he chose Osaka because I think that's where he got the best money. Not a lot of people wanted to move there.
Okay.
As compared to Hong Kong.
Okay. So tougher.
Yeah,
so that's
tougher.
why the pay's better.
The pay was better. I'm assuming. I haven't ever asked him this, but he did live in Korea for 6 months. He lived in Hong Kong for 6 months back then, and then he finally moved to Japan and settled. Sorry, what year was this? The 70s, the mid 70s.
That's much credit to him, because if you went to Hong Kong, I think Hong Kong would have been very attractive at that time. And he went to Japan and took the hardest route. It's kind of like, much respect.
Yeah, and he actually loved Hong Kong back then as well, because he had a lot of colleagues who spoke English. But in Japan, hard to make friends not speaking the language.
How big was the Indian population there?
I'm not sure, but at its peak, there were 1,000 Indian families when I used to live there growing up. Yeah. So there was actually a good community of us.
That's not big though. 1,000.
Hey, Indian family though. A lot of kids.
What are you saying?
No, a lot of kids.
Yeah, they do.
So it's like a big party.
But still.
And they're close knit.
So I'm from England, and there's quite a large Indian population in England. Yeah. So like there's pockets of them where it's literally just whole like Indian. It might as well be India there.
I guess in comparison to that, no, not a lot of people trekked out there after partition. There are stories of all the old timers who live in Kobe. That's where we actually live, Kobe, and we work in Osaka. And they actually came over on boats and stuff. So there are a lot of pearl dealers, jewelers. There's a lot of people exporting Japanese products.
Let's talk about this partition thing, because I think a lot of the audience don't know what you're actually talking about. So could you explain what is partition, and then what ripples effect that had on families?
So India and Pakistan split after after the British colonial rule left back to Britain. Which was when? 1947, I think. That's when India and Pakistan got their independence. And what happened was a lot of my family was actually in the Pakistan area of India at that point. So they're in Karachi, which is the business center of Pakistan at the moment. And they are from a state called Sindh. So we're actually Sindhi. We are, and the Sindhi people have actually migrated across the world and been successful entrepreneurs around the world. So a lot of them moved to Dubai. A lot of them moved to Hong Kong. A lot moved to the UK.
Right. So so after the partition, you moved across the world. Is that right? Am I understanding this properly?
Our family actually stayed back in India, but we had to move to another state within India.
Okay.
A lot of people did move out of India.
And this partition is due to religious reasons or just from colonialism?
The partition was decided by Nehru and Gandhi.
Okay.
So it goes back a long ways.
Okay, interesting.
Many, many moons ago. So you spent, going back to Japan. So you grew up as a child there and you studied there.
Yes.
Okay. And then amongst all your peers, you decided to, I guess, come back to Hong Kong? Or did I miss a step from that?
No, I never actually lived in Hong Kong. I was born in Mumbai, and I moved to Japan 4 months later. And I grew up there. I went to a Japanese pre-nursery, and then I went on to international school in Japan.
So if I put a screen between me and you speak Japanese, I won't know.
絶対わからないと思います. You wouldn't.
Man, he's good.
Whoa, man.
Wait, Alex, how do you know?
No, I mean, I watch enough cartoons. I think Chester could kind of clarify for me.
I think something that me and Alex will understand, actually Long will understand too, is if you were raised in a country that isn't yours, right? So obviously it's Japan. It's got Japanese people in. You don't look Japanese at all. You look Indian, right? And a time where, the world wasn't so open, shall we say? Like, how was that growing up for you? Because the Japanese are very proud to be Japanese and you're like an outsider. So what was that like?
So I think when I went to pre-nursery, I had trouble fitting in as in a Japanese school, being the only brown guy, I guess.
You're the only brown guy there?
Yes, they were all Japanese students, and I would wear the yellow hat and I would wear all the Japanese clothes and go to school.
Yeah.
And but following that, my parents realized that it's not working. I would come home crying every day.
Oh.
So I was actually moved to international school after that.
So what age was this?
I think it was like 3 years old.
Okay.
So it was only from 2 to 3 pre-kindergarten where I was
felt uncomfortable, basically.
Yeah. I mean, we did have instances of bullying by Japanese kids on us Indian kids growing up. But as we grew older, I think our Japanese skills got better, and the society did open up a lot.
Okay.
I would say Kobe is the first port where foreigners actually arrived in Japan. I think it's MC Perry who arrived in Japan back in the 1850s or something like that. And so it's actually got a real colonial feel in terms of the architecture and stuff.
Yeah.
In Kobe. And that's where I actually grew up.
So now you're older, and let's say you do business meetings, yeah. Does that actually so work in your favor? Because Japanese, they also value, oh my God, he actually learned our language properly, all the mannerisms, all the little subtleties in communication, the etiquettes, yeah. They think, it totally works in your benefit now, right?
I definitely think it does, because I can sit down with them and have a drink with them and have a totally casual conversation, and we can be buddy-buddy.
What's a very specific Japanese, I would say, quirk or something within the culture that you picked up?
When I actually worked in Tokyo for a year at UBS, and this is something I didn't know about until I started working in Tokyo. They made us go to a business school sort of for a week before we started our jobs at the bank, and we had to get on elevators and we had to stand in the position based on our seniority.
In the elevator?
In the elevator. So where I don't remember the actual positions, but until now, when I go back to Japan and I'm at my company there, I get in the lift and they always let me in first, and I always move to the back right corner, and then everybody just stands in front. They won't come next to me.
It's because you're the boss, basically, and then
in that company, yes, but and then they're always waiting for the elevator door to close, and they're bowed until I leave. for instance. And I still do that to my clients as well. And I'll walk people to the lift and stuff.
Wow,
That's so cool. I
It is
didn't know
kind of cool
that.
how you've got
Yeah.
this mixed culture.
It's interesting to a lot of people. Yeah.
Yeah, it is very
definitely.
interesting.
But I think, okay, so this is one thing I've kind of learned about your character. You're someone that's actually very proactive and you're on the spot. So one of my friends was actually looking to do some sort of business in Japan.
Yes.
So I introduced her to Roneel, and there and then he made the phone call. It was literally like a cold call. And I thought, man, this guy is gifted. So how did you develop that? Is that because that business mentality, is that what you've been doing in Japan all this time?
It's about, it's actually a book I read, 10X. I don't remember the author's name, but it's about, well, I'm halfway through the book, but I started about 6 months ago, and I've been reading it here and there, and it's about just doing everything right then and then, right there and then, and putting 10X of your effort into doing whatever you do.
Wow. And, okay, so because going back, so your family, they're involved in a majority of different businesses, and I believe
Yes.
your father-in-law's also in quite an extensive amount of, portfolio
Yes.
business. So with that, did they kind of nurture you, train you? Did you get influenced by that sort of experience as well?
Yes. So my first job, per se, I was 18 years old. I just graduated high school. My father had gone to India and picked up the rights for Indian television network. Yeah. Before this, all the Indian streaming in Japan was illegal, per se. Everyone was just catching it on their satellite dishes and streaming it to their TVs. So my dad saw that it was going offline and we'd have to register it. He was like, all right, I'm going to go get the rights for it. He flew out the same day, got the rights, was back in a week, and that was my summer job. I was selling Indian TV boxes and setting up satellites for users around Japan.
Is that like the Chinese TV programs we had in the UK?
Yeah, it was. When that came in with TVB and stuff, it was pretty much exactly like that. Yeah.
So, but your father took that business on.
Yeah, he took it on and he made me in charge of it, and I had no idea what I was doing. I was 18. So before I went to uni, he got me into that. So I was actually literally going to people's houses,
Knocking on
and
doors.
I think,
knocking on doors. Yeah.
I think, for example, Lung Lung always sees this as very interesting. If you come from a certain level of background and yet you still have the drive and motivation to do your own thing, right? But I was pushed to work, right, for my money from a very early age, when I'm probably like, I would say a legal age, right?
Yeah.
And I think when you see your parents working so hard and you feel like you can't not work your ass off, right?
Yes,
do you find
of
that
course.
as well?
I mean, that's where my drive comes from.
Do you think that where it comes from?
When I was growing up, my parents were driving a yellow plated car. A yellow plated car in Japan means less than 600 cc's. So that's what they were driving every day from Kobe to Osaka, trying to make ends meet, sending me and my brother to an international school. It was tough for them. And my mom was working. I would come home and no one would be home. And I could see how hard they worked. Saturdays, Sundays. They would actually take me on their sales meetings sometimes if I had to go to Osaka.
Yeah, that's the same when my parents were starting out. Like, I really, he's saying all this, but I really feel that there's emotion in between those words because I know that feeling. Sometimes I was stuck in the house by myself, really young. And then on the occasion where I was taken to the shop, I had a little bed. And I used to sometimes just fall asleep. It wasn't really like that much of a bed, right? And I used to fall asleep until the closing. And then my mum would wake me up and say, okay, we can go home now. And then to keep me entertained, I had a bucket of water. Yeah. And my dad, he used to make little paper boats. And I used to play with them in the water, And sometimes I'd be really, because they were in the F&B, so there's like lots of potatoes. So I used to climb up the potatoes. It was like a mountain, so I'd like climb up the mountain, That was like my, it sounds really stupid, but that was what kept me entertained.
The funny thing is, I feel like, let's say the new generation, because I've got like a younger sister and siblings that are probably 10 years, age difference, and they don't really understand what we're talking about. But the thing is, I know I had it, even though I think I had it quite hard, I know for a fact my parents had it even harder. And so it's kind of like my parents would always say to me, "Oh, you don't know back then when I was doing this, I wouldn't really understand."
I don't
But
want
you
to
know,
know.
it's like I
I
don't want to
don't
know,
wanna
right?
know.
But
Yeah.
then what I've gone through, in a way, it was tough and challenging. But then when you say it to like the new generation, they're clueless. So I feel like
Yeah,
each generation
So-
getting easier in the terms of their life standards?
Me and my brother, I have an older brother. He lives in Dubai, also an entrepreneur. We didn't grow up together for the first maybe 6 years of my life. So I didn't know I had a brother. I mean, I knew I had a brother, but he would come in for the summers, and I would get really jealous but it was a younger brother getting jealous of the older one. Normally, it works the other way when you have a younger sibling come around. My parents couldn't afford to send him to international school at that point, and his company wouldn't pay for it. So he was actually growing up with my grandparents. But when I was born, my mom was like, "There's no way I'm gonna get Roneel to live in India again. I want to be with my kids." So that's where I think my dad got his drive from as well. He wanted his kids to be in Japan with him.
That's really impressive. And then, so after UBS, that's where your proper first paid job was. You worked your way up, I'm assuming.
No, I was only there for a year and a bit. And my brother had moved to Dubai during this time. He got married and moved to Dubai. And so I saw that my dad was sort of losing interest in the business. And so I went back to join forces again.
Did you work at UBS because you thought that was the part of the, like, I would say, like, it ticks that box, like everybody should try and get into investment banking first, or did you do it because you wanted to be in finance?
I was a computer. I did computer science in college
Okay.
and economics,
Mhm.
so it was like the perfect fit. I was doing IT there, so I was programming for them.
Okay.
And I realized that I don't have that personality.
Yeah.
I didn't want to sit behind a desk and
Mm.
program for
Mm-hmm.
8 to 10 hours a day.
Yeah.
It was a great job.
Mm-hmm.
My manager was great. He taught me a lot of things.
Yeah.
My colleagues were great, but it was definitely not what I wanted to do.
Okay.
And I was more of a salesman. Like, I wanted to go out there and talk to people.
You know how you said you were selling the TV boxes?
Yeah.
Were you good at it?
It was a lot of dealing in Kobe at that time.
Yeah.
There were a lot of older Indian people, so it was 50s and 60-year-olds.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess I was good. They were like, "Oh, this cute little boy's come to sell me TV."
You knew you had to have
Yeah.
that sales technique.
You
played it to your favor, right?
Yes, I think I did. And generally, everyone wanted the TV
anyway.
at that point
Yeah.
because there was no connection to the homeland otherwise.
Completely
Okay.
right, yeah. When that Chinese thing came out. I mean, I told you, before even satellite came out, there was these people in vans that used to have the cassettes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Selling
they
programs.
recorded them in Hong Kong, sent them over to England, and used to like pay £1 for every cassette you rented. And then the guy would come out a week later and collect them, and you'd get, so you'd do like, oh, I can do like, because now we just do box sets and totally just do it all in one run, right? You couldn't do it like that. So we're like, all right, I think I can do about 4 cassettes. 4 cassettes, I think, had 4 episodes. So that's 16 episodes that you do in a week. Again, just remember that very clearly.
Was that? I guess it's a different story for you because it's just cable, isn't it? So it's just
Yes.
constantly being able to be recorded.
And we actually took it a step further. We were the first IPTV, Indian IPTV owners, I think, even in the world. But then everything went digital. People started getting a lot of illegal boxes came out. So everyone started streaming through there, and our revenue stream just went down.
That's
And,
when you had to come back to sort the business out, I'm assuming.
well, we do run another business, which we helped discount stores in Japan get product. For instance, bags, sunglasses, branded products, luxury.
And what platform do you kind of, sell your products to?
So we sell it to, for instance, right now we sell to the duty-free stores in Japan. We sell to stores on Rakuten, on Yahoo, on Amazon. We have our own stores on Amazon, Yahoo, and Rakuten, selling shoes, sunglasses. We work with a lot of the brands directly to get these products to their clients. And they actually manufacture stuff for us, for our outlets.
So you get these stock and then you distribute them in those different areas.
Correct.
Oh, okay. And how? Because you're in the field of luxury, so how do you market that? Because I think the online platforms, to me, sounds very challenging because there's so many, and it looks like there's a lot of competition out there. So how do you differentiate yourself on that basis?
I think our pricing is probably the most competitive. That's where we work. The brands do a lot of marketing themselves. We do have models come in, we take photos of it, and we try to bring the best experience to the user with the best price. For instance, all our products on one of our platforms is 1-day delivery. So you order it today, it's there the next day. That really helps with our sales, even if we're slightly more expensive.
So get things swiftly, right? That's what the new game is.
And people don't want to wait. If they buy a pair of sunglasses, it's usually an impulse buy. They're in a store, they're looking at a pair of, let's say, Chloe sunglasses, and they like it then and there. They pull out their phones and they probably look for it online. And if they can find it, they want to buy it there and then, get it the next day, and use it for the boating party or the picnic they have planned for the next day.
Because they want to look good to try and get the chicks, or the other way around, the hunks. But you going back to your business, and did you have any business in India or anything like that?
We do not have any business in India, no.
Oh, because I was wondering like how you feel, because you were born and raised in Japan, you have that mixed culture. Going back to the homeland, what's that like for you? How are you treated? Like, because you understand that culture to a level, but you never actually lived or breathed it, right? So it's a bit like us being brought up abroad, then coming back to Hong Kong. My parents are from Hong Kong, right? But Hong Kongers will never accept like you as a Hong Konger, right?
So when I go back to India, my Hindi is not great. I can't speak the language like they can, obviously. The Hindi I learned was all from movies and the television programs we used to sell.
What television back
so
then?
I can't read or write the language. So I'll never be.
Can you do the dances?
I can do the dance. I was actually in dance competitions in university.
Nice.
So, that was
You're gonna have to show us a few moves later, yeah?
Yes, sure.
Is that how you with the ladies? Is that right? Interestingly, so now that you've been in Hong Kong quite recently. So what brought you the move? Because I think you was doing so well in Japan. So what's the necessity to come over to Hong Kong?
A lot of our clients in Japan started becoming Chinese, actually. A lot of the Chinese were coming to Japan to buy luxury products. So we saw the opportunity to move to Hong Kong and establish a company here. And a lot of tourists were obviously coming to Hong Kong as well from China. So we just started doing that.
And you met your wife as well?
I met my wife in Bali.
Okay.
She lived in Japan with me for 2.5 years. So she's a lawyer and she passed the bar, I would say, in Hong Kong. I think it's called something else here. And
PCOL, is that right?
Yes. So she did all of that here. She went to UCL in the UK though.
Oh, okay.
And it was hard for her to teach in Japan. Without learning the language and passing the bar there, which would have taken another 10 years, it definitely made sense to move to Hong Kong, where she could actually pursue her career as well. For both of us, it made sense at the time.
And how are you finding it?
It's been good. A lot of opportunity here. You can meet a lot of people. It's great. I'm having a great time.
You met Bui as well.
Yes, of course. Yeah.
Over at Foxglove. So curious thing, then we have to talk about, because the other side of luxury is actually watches. And watch is actually one of your passions, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
So how did you get into it?
My first watch was a Tag Heuer in high school. So my dad was already into watches.
Tag Heuer at high school. Damn.
It's like
Yeah.
rolling.
It's really good.
Damn.
Yeah.
The satellite business is
You
doing well.
started high. We were like
So-
swatches and everything.
So I took that to uni. And then in 2004, my dad was going to the Basel show, and I went along with him. And that's where I saw the Rolex Daytona, and I really liked it. So in 2005, when I graduated university, that's what my dad gave to me as a gift.
Which
Black
material?
dial, steel,
steel.
116520.
Oh, solid. You still have that piece?
Yes, of course. It's engraved on the back.
So that's
Yeah.
a keeper.
Yeah, that's never going anywhere.
Yeah.
You can
I
definitely
don't know
tell.
where the Tag Heuer is, though.
Don't know where it's gone, right?
Okay. Can you remember what model it is? From what collection?
Kyrium.
Huh?
Kyrium, I believe.
Kyrium?
Okay, I don't know that one.
It was with the links were like a L-shaped.
That I do
Really
not know.
small dial. It was like 36 mm. Blue dial watch.
We gotta Google that.
Yeah, I'm going to Google that later. I'm going to work that bit out. So what did your... Okay, so now, because I know you've got quite a serious collection, when did it get to that level? So, I mean, you've been collecting, you had some pieces, and then you started being, okay, this is quite good.
So when I was in university, I had a few friends from India, from Saudi Arabia, who would talk about watches all the time. And when they saw I got a Daytona, they were quite impressed. And then following that, we would continue to talk about watches. And then I joined the banking world, where everyone around me was talking about watches. So I guess that's where I got started. But my watch after that was a Panerai, actually. At that point in Japan, the 50, the PAM 00050, was super popular and very hard to get your hands on. So I picked that up in Luxembourg.
So because actually you've been in Japan. So what are the watch collectors like over there compared to, like, let's say Dubai, compared to, say, Hong Kong?
I would say they are more practical. They want more steel watches. The steel there is much more popular, and they're looking for smaller dials. They're not as into the huge like Royal Oak offshores, for instance.
Collectors in Dubai, I'm assuming, collect everything?
Yes, I think they do. Patek, AP, Rolex, Hublots.
What kind of direction do you take in your collection? Like when you look for pieces that you like, what is there a particular way of collecting you go for?
I think I want to upgrade every time.
Upgrade.
I mean, I've started off with the Rolex, the Panerai. When I was 35, I bought my first Patek. So it took me a while to get there, but then I bought it, and yeah, it's been that was 2 years ago, so it's been pretty good since then.
So when you mean upgrade, you mean upgrade in brand? Is that what you mean, or upgrade like? Because do you mean like there's a 5711 upgrading to a 5712 to a 5740? Is that upgrading, or do you mean like I upgrade from like Tag Heuer to Omega to Rolex to whatever? Is that what you mean?
Yes, I do mean that. Yeah. Moving up in the brands, and of course, I want to. At this point, I do have a few Pateks. I have some Rolexes. I have an AP. Right. But I do want to get a Lange, for instance, and I've been looking at them. I put a deposit down for FP Journe a few weeks ago, and I would never look at those brands before.
Okay, so what made you consider that?
People were talking about it around me, so I wanted to see what the fuss was about. And when I saw it, I saw the negative lume and the motion sensor and the price, which was pretty good for a watch collector.
The Elegante, right?
Yeah, so you could guess right away. So I was like, I was sold.
So you said you bought your Patek when you were 35. What was the reason you bought it? Like, what made you decide, okay, 35, this is the year to get it?
Someone offered me the piece which I've always wanted. And I was 35 seemed like a milestone for me.
All right.
Usually I try to pick my watches up on a milestone.
Okay.
It's maybe my daughter was born.
Yeah.
Maybe I turned 30. That's when I got my Royal Oak offshore.
Mm-hmm.
And of course now it's becoming more of a hobby, so those milestones have become
More
secondary.
frequent.
Yeah, yes. Yes, there's a lot more milestones.
You have to make them up, right?
Exactly.
Buy a car, just buy a watch as well at the same
I
time.
had a pizza today.
I gotta get a watch. Had ice cream, pick up a watch. Because so I met your father-in-law. So this is someone I want to speak about in a little bit, because we went to get a shirt done, and I think that was his daughter's business.
It's his daughter's business.
Yeah, so it's your sister-in-law.
Yes, it's called Milk Shirts, and I'm wearing one right now, actually. And I only wear Milk shirts, great quality shirts, Italian. I think it's Italian cloth, but it's made in Hong Kong, and so I get about 10 to 20 shirts every year from her. And so his background, actually, he's also a trader. I think he exports products from China to the rest of the world. And recently they've launched also a food product locally. So they are actually the distributors of Goli.
Yes,
It's
apple cider vinegar.
Yeah, apple cider vinegar gummies.
Yes,
right?
exactly.
Yeah, and they're the sole distributor for that.
Kind of like health products as well, right? But what I was very surprised by him, I won't say surprised, but one thing about him was he's so humble. Like you can tell that he's got hands in a lot of different areas of business, and yet he's still very down to earth. And I think he's very proud of course, his family and children. But there's a story with you helping him collect a watch. Is that correct?
Yes. So he goes more for the watches, which he likes at the point. It's more of
Aesthetics.
Yeah. He's not worried about the brand at all. When he likes it, he'll pick it up. But that time I was with him in Macau, and he saw an IWC, rose gold one in the boutique. He liked it, and I was like, wait, I can probably get you a better price. So I helped him get that watch.
But that was just one story, but that's not just the only person you help get watches. Is that correct?
Yes, I do help my friends add to their collections. Or sometimes they need to get a gift for their wives, their kids. I can probably sort of advise them on where to go for value, especially.
And so where do you go? Because part of the topic that we like to consider is kind of what we call the waiting list. Like there are some pieces out there that are quite hard to obtain. So I'm very curious from your perspective, how do you build those relationships to get them?
For me, it's been a lot of my dad's friends from Basel or Zurich. They've helped me for my first few pieces. So for instance, the Daytona was purchased at Booker in Zurich. The Panerai I got was one of his friends who was a jeweler. And then slowly what I've done is I've actually talked to people in Japan, actually, a couple of 80s there, because I go back there every month and I actually still have a house there. And I've worked it, I guess. I've been on the waiting list. I've been patient, and I've gotten a few pieces which I wanted.
That's really cool. Because, at some point I need to go to Osaka with you as well. I want to check out that place. To go through your eyes. Okay, so the thing I want to ask is in terms of valuation-wise, because you're in business, does the resale value have an impact on you, on your perspective of buying watches?
Definitely. I think it has a lot to do with it. I would like to only invest in watches which have value for the future, because I do see them as pieces which I can pass on to my daughters, and hopefully they can appreciate them as much as I do. And if they ever come across a day where they need to sell it, they can, and there's value in that.
So you're also into like vintage watches as well, then, because certain pieces of vintage, they do go up in value if you're looking from that perspective.
I do own a 3800, so it's a two-tone Nautilus, but no, that's the only vintage watch I own. I have a bunch of Omega limited editions, but I wouldn't consider them vintage as yet.
So are they like re-editions, you mean?
No, they're actually originals. Like, for instance, I have an Omega Apollo watch, which you saw a week ago.
Yeah,
very
it's
nice.
A good piece. Yeah,
but that's brand new. That's a re-edition, I guess. Yeah,
you would love that.
And
it's all gold.
and it's got a bit of red in there as well.
Is this? I see it quite often. Like the hands are modern, right? It's not the.
It's a modern looking
Yeah.
watch. It's got a red bezel.
Yeah, it's
Yes,
the
red
red.
bezel.
Yeah, I've seen it.
Yeah, yellow gold.
and eventually, I hope that goes up in value.
Okay.
But until then, I'll enjoy it for sure.
But then you mentioned slightly about independence and Lange. So I'm going to say the obvious. I think Lange doesn't really have a strong resale value. So what made you become interested in that particular brand?
Well, the recent launch of the Odysseus, so I had to go see that. And the Zeitwerk. I've always looked at that for the last 10 years. I've always wondered what's going on. So I walked in there a few months back, talked to the guy, and I've learned about the brand now. A few guys have got me interested in it as well, who have nice pieces, the datagraphs and stuff.
Yeah, Daniel.
Yes.
I think he's.
I'm a great ambassador.
I think so. Actually, I think I've heard way loads of people get influenced by Daniel than any other person in regards to the datagraph.
I think it's an easy brand to sell, to be honest. For me, there's not a lot of negatives, for me as that brand, and it really fits me as a personality. So
Yeah, and it's
I guess
different.
if you believe in it, it's
Yes.
easier to sell, right? Well, I don't sell it, but I mean, yeah, I really like them.
And the other brand I'm looking at is Vacheron, which I've been sort of following for the last couple of months as well.
Why is that?
I really like the blue on the dial. The color is striking. It's dark when you look at it from one angle. It's not when you look at it from another angle. I really like blue.
It's like a mirrored effect.
Yes. It's different from the 5711 blue or the 5712 blue. It's completely different.
Do you have any like holy grails, like that you'd like to own one day, that you really like? Think, you know, they're kind of like out of my range right now, but I'd love to own you one day.
As of now, I haven't really looked at I really like the Chime Master, but I could never see myself
Okay, right.
wearing it.
Yeah.
Was that the 6004?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that the reference for it? 6000.
It's like the two-faced one, isn't it?
It's the one which Jay-Z owns.
It's massive.
Yeah, it's huge.
It's
Was it
massive,
6300? I might have mistaken the name. It's one of the two. Right. But okay,
Obviously, we know what we're talking about.
yeah. And so I have to hear, like, what's your best watch story then? So of course the Daytona is quite a sweet one.
Yeah. What would I say is my best watch?
So it should be easier. Like, what in your collection will you not move on? For sure.
I will never sell.
Yeah, that will be a keeper, because obviously they're special to you, right? And they're special for a reason. Oh, everything's up for sale.
Just sell them all to get the grand prime.
So when I started collecting Pateks, when I was 35 years old, I actually got one from a dealer. So it wasn't with my name on it. Okay. And that's gone now. But all the watches I've gotten after that from the NAD with my name on the actual guarantee card, those are special to me, because the AD actually saw value in me and they chose, okay, this guy can actually wear my watch. And it's been good since then.
So I've got two last questions. So one on your kind of life side. So if you was to give a piece of advice for anyone doing business, what would be your best piece of advice?
There'll be two. Do everything you can right away. Okay. Means don't wait. And the second one is loyalty is really important. Keep the people around you. Keep the best people around you. Like, make sure they're loyal to you.
So the first question, going back to your first point, so is that the perspective of if you can do business now versus later, just get it done now?
Yes, get it done now. Make the most the viable solution right now and see what happens.
Because sometimes Daniel comes to me and says to me, like, sometimes it's best to wait and then you get the bigger fish. I don't have to put it in another phrase, but it's kind of like...
sometimes I think, well, Chinese have a different type of culture, right? Which they don't like to force things, right? So sometimes when you force things, it doesn't have the desired effect. So we're more on harmony, right? And so that's what I say to Alex. He likes to go in head, nose, bang, bang, bang. I mean, I like to say, it's not I don't disagree with him, because I wouldn't be wrong in saying if I hadn't banged my way through, this podcast wouldn't be happening either, right? But on certain times, you also know, especially when you're handling relationships, when to go hard, when to pull back on certain relationships. That's my point.
What's your perspective?
I guess it's a bit of that too, because in Japanese culture, it's a lot of harmony as well. You're waiting, and it takes a bit of time to get a deal done in Japan before you can open an account, before you can even move a step forward. You have to. It takes some time, but I would say going out there and actually contacting them, that would be the first step, which you got to do right away. You can't wait. You can't be scared to take that first step.
I think the main point here is you're talking about not procrastinating, right? Me and Dan always talk about when we look at our parents in that generation, for lack of a better word, they're fearless, right? So they do things without thinking. So if they're going to go hiking, they wear whatever shoes they have on and they just go hiking. And then when it comes to us, we're like, okay, got to go shop for hiking shoes and sticks and whatever. And by the time, look the part. By the time we get there, okay, the sun is setting, right?
Yeah.
So I think this is like much needed advice for our generation, which is just pick up the phone, get going, and then go from there, right?
Yeah. I think now in nowadays generation, there's more noise. Do you know what I mean? Like,
there's more knowledge.
You're bombarded by knowledge. You're bombarded by people saying this and that. So it puts doubt. Before, you used to just have it. The closest communication you could have would pick up the phone and then have to and the person had to be on the other side of the phone, right? So in lots of ways, you just would go ahead and do it.
But you know, the other thing when I was listening to your story was that with the older generation, they're going through like, it's hard physically. So they're like going on the really slow cars. For us now, it's like hard mentally because we have all these mental blocks. And then we're trying to go through getting past these mental blocks. So we never get stuff done. Whereas back in the days, it's hard more physically. They're not
Yeah.
scared. It's just physically, it's hard for them. So I think that's the biggest difference.
Going to your second point though, loyalty. So how do you develop loyalty? Because it's is it two sides or one side, or how do you maintain people? How
It's
do you keep people
definitely
loyal?
double-sided. If you're loyal to the people around you, they're going to be loyal to you. If through all of this mess which is going on in the world, COVID-19, if you're protecting your team's going to be there for you when you need them. I feel.
But then, okay, so
So an optimist.
Yeah. Oh, it is an optimist kind of perspective.
You're very positive kind of person.
I am positive when it comes to business, definitely.
Because we spoke to Hay, and we also had this other discussion. Sorry to keep digressing or considering, but he actually said there are some people that you have to kind of let go because they will drag you down and hold you back.
Of course.
So even though you want them to be loyal, you want to be loyal to them, but sometimes you just know that they're just not good. So what do you do in that situation?
I guess you have to let them go.
Okay.
I can't. If it comes to a time when things are better, you can always reach out to them again. I guess there's different ways of doing it.
Okay, okay. That was for life. Now we're going to talk about watches. So that one best piece of advice for people who are starting their watch collecting game.
There's no level too low that you can start at. I mean, I had a Tag Heuer.
Well, that was
I
high.
That's high. Wait a minute.
You
Wait a minute. I'll just make it
No,
absolutely
I
clear.
mean-
That's high.
You've just said that. You've just killed a lot of people.
I'm like, we're doing
No,
the thing of Casios.
I have a G-Shock, which is full metal. I really like that piece.
Oh, is that the stainless steel one?
Yeah, the stainless steel one.
Yeah.
And
How's
that's
that,
still
how's
part
that
of my
on
collection.
scratches?
It's scratched up. It's seen some good times, but it's still a good watch to have, and it's part of my collection.
Okay. So okay, that ends the questions with Roneel. I really enjoyed that. So rather than doing the quick fire rounds that we usually do, I thought I'd do a never have I ever round. So you can say I have or I have not, of course. And so here are the questions. So never have I ever bought a watch, sold it, and bought it back again.
I have not.
Oh.
Been close to? Have you been close to?
No.
Have you
Any
ever sold a
regrets?
watch, actually?
Yes.
Which one?
The one I got on my 35th, my first Patek.
Oh.
He said through the dealer, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
interesting.
it was through a
Oh,
dealer.
okay,
It didn't
right.
have my name on it,
Right,
so
that was the main reason, yeah?
Any
Okay.
regrets?
I actually would like to buy that watch back if I could get it.
So that's the first one. Okay. Never have I ever bought a fake watch.
I have not.
Oh, okay. So never have I ever sold something for less value than it was and made some excuse and said it was already sold. So I'm assuming this is for business. So I guess in your business, you sold it and you thought, okay, that's too cheap to let it go. I'll take it back again.
That's very bad business.
No, when
ethics.
I'm committed to something in business, I'll stick to it.
So never have I ever gone into a shop to flex my new watch.
We all have. We're all trying to get other pieces, right?
Okay. So never have I ever been forced to buy something and make an excuse to leave rather than say no.
No, I haven't. I'd rather just say no.
Oh, okay. You're a good one. There are a lot of people out there just, let me think.
I
need
think
to
you're just
ask
talking
my
about
wife.
yourself. Most of us like,
this-
no way,
I have
man.
A particular example of this was back in Hong Kong, back in the day on Sneaker Street. Bohai guy, right?
Ladies market.
No, Bohai guy
In Mongkok. Yeah,
Yeah,
I know
yeah,
it.
yeah,
Yeah.
in Wangkok. And then this dude was hard selling these sneakers. And I think I was like 13. And he made me feel like shit when I didn't buy it. So I went and bought them. And I felt so bad that I had bought them because of that. I ended up giving them away. Yeah.
What did he do to make you feel so bad then?
Just pay me in Sydney Taylor. So they basically like gave you a dark face, and he was like, "Oh, you don't buy this pair, and you're not buying this pair," and I've got these shoes out for you. You know what I mean? Like, and I was like, "Oh shit."
Guilt tripping you, basically.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, totally.
You're welcome to my shoe store anytime.
Ronnie will give you a hard time as well, don't
Well,
worry.
I'll tell you what, right? These days, these sneakers are harder to get than these watches.
That's true,
man.
that's true.
Like, damn.
Okay, so never have I ever thought about buying a Hublot.
I've been gifted a Hublot. I've never bought one myself.
Okay.
Is he a good friend?
No, it's from my father-in-law, actually.
Okay.
All right, must be good. Okay. And the last one, never have I ever bought a watch and got rid of it after a week.
I've thought about that, but I've never done it.
What was that?
It was a Zenith. I still have it. I got it at a really good deal, and it was a a basic leather strap with a date, two-hand, and I just never. I wanted to get rid of it after that. After I wore it.
So you only had it for like a week or something. I thought, nah, it's not working for me.
Pin buckles just don't work for me.
Interesting.
I need
Okay.
deployant.
Yeah, deployant. Okay. So, well, that concludes the Never Have I Ever questions and also the end of the podcast. So I'd like to thank Roneel for spending time with us and our listeners for staying to the end. So please stay tuned for other episodes of the Waiting List podcast. And you can find Roneel at I Dream of Watches. So to that end, please subscribe to our podcast and wait for new updates. Thank you, guys.
Thanks.
Thanks,
Thank
Roneel.
you.
Had a
Thank you,
really
Roneel.
good time.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for tuning in to the Waiting List podcast. Hit the subscribe button and the next episode will come straight to your phone as soon as it's ready. Whilst I'm here, please remember to leave a nice review and follow us on Instagram at the Waiting List podcast.